Hello, fellow miners. In this video, we're going to review PPLNS, or Pay Per Last N Shares mining. PPLNS mining allows customers at Prohashing to receive a lower fee in exchange for accepting some of the variance or time between payouts that mining takes. In this presentation, we'll talk a little bit about why PPLNS and PPS, or pay per shares mining, are different. We'll review how payouts are issued from PPLNS mining, and we'll tie it all together by looking at Prohashing's website and showing you how all of the concepts from this presentation are listed on the site for you to review as a miner. Let's get started. First, a few basic mining concepts that are important to understand for PPLNS mining. Mining does not have a progress bar. That's why PPLNS mining is so different from either of the other type of mining modes. There is not a bar that states that you can produce a certain number of hashes with your mining equipment and then you'll be guaranteed to find a block. Instead, what actually happens is that there is an open-ended mining. There's no right side to this progress bar. Instead, the bar continues to infinity, and each hash doesn't bring you any closer to the next one. Take a look at this NASA astronaut looking through the International Space Station's cupola module. Let's suppose that she had a powerful microscope and she was looking down at planet Earth trying to find an ant. So she looks through the microscope at any point on the Earth and doesn't find the ant. And then she looks again at a different place and the ant isn't there either. And she continues to do this for a long time as she circles the planet. Now you would think that if these were dependent trials, that she would eventually find the ant by simply looking everywhere around the globe. But Pay Per Last N Shares mining is not like that. Here we're searching for a moving ant. So she could look at the same place on the Earth many times and eventually the ant might be found there. And she's never actually guaranteed to find that ant. She could look at it for 1,000,000 years and she could still be no closer to finding it than she was in the beginning, because the ant is always moving, and therefore any amount of coverage of looking at the planet is not going to make it more likely that she finds that ant. So let's assume that we're calculating hashes, and we search for one hash, and that was not the one that finds the block. Then we search for 2 more, and that didn't find the block. And 4 more than that, no block. And 8 more than that, no block. 16 more, no block. And then all these, and no, we keep going and going and going, and we still don't find the block. But wait, that does not mean you're actually any closer to finding the block. In reality, the current status of your mining actually really looks like this. Every hash starts over. All of the work is gone after every hash. You're no closer. So we're really starting over and over and over and over again at each time we calculate a hash with your mining equipment. Maybe, it's not guaranteed, eventually you find that one hash right there that finds the block. And that is the one where all of the customers who are involved in the PPLNS mining for that round will get paid. Otherwise, it's just continuing to search through independent hashes. However, even though we don't know exactly when a block is found, we can calculate some probabilities of when those blocks would be found, the expected amount of work that's required until the next PPLNS round begins. So here's that progress bar that I talked about a little earlier, and as you can see, the progress bar has an open end on the right. There's no right end of the bar. So we can say, for example, that we've computed a certain amount of work, let's say 15%, until a typical block would be found. But no matter how much work we've done, there's expected to be 69% of the work that it takes for the next block to be found remaining. Let's say that 100% of a typical block's work is out here. So if we had, for some network that has 10-minute blocks, been mining for 1 minute, then we would expect another 6.9 minutes of that amount of mining if we had 100% of the hash rate until a block was found. But there would always be 6.9 minutes until the next block is found. We could also be very unlucky, though, because in the last circumstance, you can see that we had not yet done so much hashing, and therefore it was still likely that we would be more lucky than average. Let's zoom out a little bit. Now we have a progress bar that has much more than 100% of the work already done. We'll say, I don't know, about 300%. We still have that expected work that needs to be done after this to find that block and end that round. So we could be very unlucky and we could continue on until the future. That's the variance involved in PPLNS mining, and that's the difference between PPLNS and PPS mining. Here, the customer is accepting the risk that it will take a very long time, as in this progress bar, until the block is found, and therefore they would earn less money. And pool luck, which we showed above, this is meaningless for individual earnings, by the way, but it does show what the pool's earnings would be, is equal to 1 over the amount of work that was expended. In that previous slide, we saw that the amount of work currently expended, if a block had been found right then, was about 300% of the average. So therefore, our luck for the pool would be 33%. Over time, this would average out because we would have some blocks that would be found with only 1/3 of the expected work. But there's going to be high variance in between this time, and that's what PPLNS miners expect. So second, let's talk about how your earnings are calculated in a PPLNS pool like Prohashing. Let's assume that we have a state where a PPLNS round, or time since miners have started but a block hasn't yet been found, has begun. Let's say that there's a total difficulty of all of the shares that have been submitted for this round of 10. And there's 4 miners who are mining this round. There's you, who as you can see has submitted 4 difficulty in total. There's this second miner, miner 2, that has submitted a total difficulty of 3. A third miner that has submitted a total difficulty of 2, and a fourth miner with a total difficulty of 1. And therefore, you can see the percentages. Here, you have submitted 40% of all the work for this round. So even though we don't know when the next block is going to be found, if a block were found in the next share, you would earn 40% of that block's rewards. And let's say that you submit the next share, but don't actually find the block then. So therefore, you would have submitted a total difficulty of 5. Note that your difficulty goes up by 1 because of that share, but all of the other miners' difficulties don't rise because they haven't submitted any shares. So your expected payout, if that block were to be found, is 46% now of the block reward. And that came at the expense of a decline in the others' expected payouts. But let's say now that another person, after you just submitted that share, really turned on the hash rate and doubled their difficulty. So here, miner 2 doubled the amount of shares that he had submitted, and instead of 3 difficulty, now has a total of 6 difficulty work towards this round. So that miner, even though you hadn't stopped mining, increased his share of this round's reward to 43%, and your share declined by a whole 10% from 46 to 36%. So that means that you need to continue mining during a PPLNS round if you want to retain the same amount of earnings. Let's look at the estimated rewards for a PPLNS round. If we suppose that the number of coins found in the next block for this round would be 50, and that just happens to be what Bitcoin's block reward was during its first halving epoch, then you would earn 36% of that reward, or 18 coins. And that miner, number 2, who submitted those last-minute shares, would earn 43%, or 21.5 coins. You can see the other miners' rewards over here in the top, in the right 2 columns of this slide. Next, let's talk a little bit about payouts at Prohashing and how you can understand when you'll be paid, and you can see how your payouts are reviewed on the website. One concept to understand is block maturity. Coins that are mined, unlike coins that are sent, need to mature to be spent. And maturity is a lot different than sending a coin that has already been mined to another person. When a coin is sent to another person, there is the concept of block confirmations. And generally, with Bitcoin, 1 confirmation is sufficient. And for some other networks, maybe 5 or 10 confirmations are sufficient. But for maturity, there are many, many, many more confirmations required for a block to mature, and that prevents a new chain from being withheld and then reverting a large number of blocks and conducting a 51% on the network on the attack. So if there are 100 blocks here that are listed in order here, and they're represented by these empty boxes, let's go on to the 101st block. So that appears, and now that causes the first block in the sequence to mature, which means that it can be spent now at this point. But all the blocks after that, you can see, are not able to be spent. And they will not be spendable until we add additional blocks onto the chain. What this means is that your blocks to be paid can take a very long time. For Bitcoin, 100 blocks is about 3/4 of a day. For Digibyte, that might mean that it takes as many as 4 days before your rewards will mature and you can be paid for a block that was mined 4 days ago when that PPLNS round ended. Remember that a PPLNS round will end when you or any miner involved in PPLNS mining that coin finds a block. Next, let's go to Prohashing's website and let's show you how these payouts are calculated and paid. Here is a miner who has been mining a lot recently in digibytes. He's mining 2 digibyte algorithms. You can see that he's mining SHA-256 and script, and he has been mining for many rounds of both of these coins. For SHA-256 right now, this miner has for the pool contributed 266 million total difficulty, and the expected difficulty to find a block is 1.244 billion. So therefore, the pool's luck is 466%. And remember, we showed that the pool's luck was 1 over this ratio of the difficulty submitted divided by the total block difficulty required to find the next block in the sequence. So the block reward for the next digibyte block is 508 digibytes, and his proportion of mining is 51.6%. That's because he has contributed 51.6% of the work. That doesn't mean that it will remain that way if he stopped mining, and that doesn't mean that if he contributes another 49% that a block will be found. It just means that of all the pool's miners right now, he has contributed 51% of all the pool's mining work. Remember, the amount of work that's been contributed towards the block being expected to be found is only about 20% at this point. And so because he contributed 51% of the pool of all the pool's miners, then he's going to receive 51% of the pool's rewards, should that block be found right now, which of 508 digibytes is 261 digibytes. That's what he would find if a block were found now. But let's look at some of his shares that were recently submitted in the Earnings tab. And in the Earnings tab, we'll click on Details for this particular share, and we'll see some of the details of this share. So here is the target difficulty. This is the important figure that shows how much is being contributed, how much work towards his share of the PPLNS round. And here he's contributed 65,536 difficulty. Notice that if I close this window, that's what's being added to the total difficulty each time that he submits his share. Now there's other miners who are contributing to the total difficulty as well, but that's how the total difficulty column is rising. It's the sum of all of the difficulties of the shares that are being submitted to try to find this PPLNS block. One important factor to note in Prohashing's PPLNS mining that is unique to Prohashing is that customers also earn pay-per-share mining for merge mined coins for that algorithm. And in this case, there are 3 merge mined coins that this customer is also being credited. And those are being credited per share with each share that he submits. You can see that for this share, he was credited about 1/10,000th of a digibyte because of the merge mined coins. So he will earn these merge mined contributions that are converted to digibytes at a low rate throughout his mining, even if nobody finds a block. And then you can see that he will earn many times more than that, 261 digibytes, when a block is actually found. While each individual share doesn't contribute much from merge mining, that will still increase a small steady income of merge mining rewards as a bonus in addition to the major rewards that are found each time a block is found. So that's all we have today about PPLNS mining. Hopefully now you understand a little bit about how PPLNS mining works and how it differs from PPS mining at Prohashing. If you'd like to get started with PPLNS mining, you can click on Tools and then Worker Configurator and then select PPLNS or Pay Per Last N Shares mining mode from the mining modes list on the drop-downs. That's all we have for today. Thanks for watching. Keep an eye out for our future videos, and happy mining.